for the first ever live Q&A class session of the Nuwaubian Nation. This will be officially the first time that the Nuwaubian doctrine has stepped foot in the soils of the great state of Oklahoma, and we're definitely glad to be able to bring this knowledge to you all. I myself am a Nuwaubian of 16 years, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and we also have a sister here, Zamotat Kamantat Net Hatep Tanasert. We are officially the only two Nuwaubians in Oklahoma City as of now. We're going to see if we can work on that. But we definitely are excited about setting up our book vending table here at the New Black Wall Street Marketplace, and also setting up our classes once a week. We definitely going to be establishing this first classes as like a beginner's class, newcomers class, stuff like that. And we, you know, as we do it, we have our book booth set up. And the idea is for the brothers and sisters who are not familiar with the Nuwaubian doctrine to purchase the scrolls, read and study the scrolls, and then come back with questions, and then we will provide you with answers to the best of our ability. Not saying that we have all the answers, but the things that we don't have the answers on, we will refer to other student teachers who may be more well versed in the doctrine. We also refer to our 24 Council of Supreme Elders. And if they can't provide us with the questions, then we refer to the legal team and the family up in Brooklyn, New York, to pass the message and the question on to the master himself, and we can get the answers to you. This class was set up and established by our teacher, Dr. Malachi York, as early back as 1963. And he has been one of the only teachers that has opened himself up to be questioned by any and everybody on any and every question or topic under and now above the sun. So we definitely take pride in following the footsteps of our master teacher, because most places you go, you just sit down and hear people preach sermons, or you sit down and hear people talk to you, and you can never really ask questions back or relate to them. So we take pride as Nuwaubians because we're actually able to ask questions and receive answers to those questions. So to the Facebook family, any questions that you all have, we're going to be answering those questions. And to the viewing crowd here at the New Black Wall Street Marketplace in Oklahoma City, we're also going to be answering questions to the best of our ability. So
you have Brother Nathaniel Washington has joined.
Okay.
You might want to speak to him.
Thank you to the brother Nathaniel Washington for joining. We definitely appreciate that.
And Desir Carre.
Desir Carre. We're going to be definitely shouting out all the family who's joining us live and who might have questions as well. So at this moment, we're going to open the floor. If there are any questions, we can go ahead and start, and I'll answer those questions to the best of my ability.
Yes. Can you explain what is Nuwaubu, or what is Nuwaubu about?
Okay. That question has often been presented to our master teacher for many, many years. You have different formats of breaking that down. You can get into the linguistic field of the word Wunuwup or Wunuwapu or Nuwaubu or Nuwaubu. You may hear it in different variations, but those of us who are familiar with language or linguists will know that you can say a word in different forms and it still be the same word. But just to summarize the question, we were taught in the early schools of Nuwaubu that Nuwaubu is the science of sound right reasoning, which is 3 degrees: right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding. So you may be familiar with this term from scriptures such as the Holy Quran and the Old Testament and the Bible, where it talks about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Well, the difference between knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding is very important to focus on, because knowledge simply means to know or to be cognizant of. And you can know something that's wrong. You can know a lie. You know what I mean? You can know. Just because you know something or you're cognizant of it does not necessarily make it factual. So in the science of Nuwaubu, we base it off of right knowledge, which is factual information. And the way we gauge factual information is through evidence, experience, and reason. Meaning, what we're doing is we're taking away belief systems, because you can believe something and you can be 100% wrong. People do it every day. You have the right to believe whatever you want. Belief in our ancient, the word religion in our ancient language does not exist. There is no word for religion. The closest word, according to our master teacher, for religion is a word called zam in our ancient language, which means opinion or conjecture, because anybody is entitled to have an opinion about anything they want. And you can't debate a person over an opinion. If I say, Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player, and they say Kobe Bryant was the greatest basketball player, that's an opinion. I'm not going to debate you over an opinion or a belief, because it's a waste of time. So, in that sense, the school or the science of Nuwaubu represents right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding that leads to sound, right reasoning. Meaning, once these 3 degrees are applied, we are now able to reason out things on our own, based on the methodology in which we analyze certain situations. So, what Nuwaubu is saying, or what Nuwaubu is basically the restoration of our original way of life before any foreign influences, before any deviations, before any tampering with the ancient texts, before any man-made influence was placed on these original teachings. And I'm going to sum it up in a simple form. You have the religion of Islam, which, according to Islamic scholars, goes back around 1400 years ago to the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, right? Then you have the religion of Christianity, which goes around 2,000 some odd years ago to the birth of the so-called Jesus or Yahshua. Then you have Judaism, which goes back around 4000 BC. And the reason it goes back around 4000 BC is because, according to biblical and Judaic scholars, they date the birth of Adam at around 4004 BC. That's roughly 6,000 years ago. You can look this up and they'll tell you that scholars have, done the generations of the Bible from Jesus on back to Adam, so on and so forth. And the date that they have is around 4004 BC. Now, when you utilize the science of Nuwaubu, and you utilize evidence, experience, and reason, and you utilize right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding, then you have to start to uncover or discover what has been fed to you. Meaning, if according to biblical scholars, Adam, who is supposedly the first man, only goes back to 4004 BC, yet archaeologists have discovered human fossils, hominid fossils of females. All the oldest bones and fossils they found have been as females now. Let's remember this. And these fossils taking us back 2, 3, and 4 million years old. And we have physical evidence that Lucy and Ardi, or who they call Dinkanesh in the Ethiopian language, Kenyapithecus, Australopithecus afarensis, and all these old fossils that they found them is predating the biblical Adam by millions of years. Something ain't right. Something cannot be right. Furthermore, where's Adam's bones? Where's Adam and Eve's tomb? Where's Noah's Ark? Where's the Temple of Solomon? Or where's the Ark of the Covenant? None of these things have been confirmed. So what the science of Nuwaubu does is it teaches you to put the mind in order by rejecting beliefs and opinions and accepting facts and searching for what can be verified. So what the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York of Panabab Yanun, has taught us to do for ourselves is to do the research. Because the point that we're trying to make is we had a culture back then when we was 2, 3, 4 million years old. Yes.
How does that differ from faith? Now you talked about belief.
Okay.
Now, how does Nuwaubu differ from faith?
Well, that's a great question. Faith would be the difference between belief and faith is a thin line between it, but there is a difference. Belief is accepting something as fact without having the knowledge, right? Faith is accepting something that you have had subsistence, that you have subsided on. Meaning, I have faith in my teacher because for over the past 50 years, he's never lied to me. He's never fed me misinformation. So I have faith on him based in the correct knowledge that he's presented to me. So faith is the confirmation of facts. I have faith in Nuwaubu because I know that Nuwaubu has never led me astray. You follow what I'm saying? In the simplest terms, if a brother go to prison, and we all know what happens, brother might go to prison, right? And him and his girl, before he went to prison, had situations. She cheating on him. She doing this. She doing that. In the back of that brother's mind, when he go down that road, he gonna know, she might not ride with me. She might not keep them legs closed with me. It's just a fact. It's a fact. It's realistic. But if you've had a woman that's been by your side, never cheated on you, and through hard times and all these struggles, she's always been there, and you catch that little bid, 2 year, 5 year, or 6 months in the county jail, whatever, you're going to say, you know what, I have faith in my woman because she's never let me down yet. Therefore, I have no reason not to have faith in her. So it's a thin line between belief and faith. Also fate, which I ain't going to get into that in the beginning classes, but fate goes a little way deeper as far as predestiny and predetermined situations and stuff like that. So basically what we're getting at is before any man-made religions or before any man-made even writings, because even writing only takes you back so far. When we talk about the science of Nuwaubu, what we're dealing with is prehistoric or prehistory. And according to history or his story, it only takes you back to 4004 BC, which is roughly 6,000 years. So when we deal with the science of Nuwaubu, we're dealing with the original way of life by the original beings who grew with this planet originally. We even taking it back further because people talk about Kemet and Egypt and stuff like that, and of course we are the original ancient Egyptians at this day and time. However, there's a thin line between dynastic Egypt and pre-dynastic Egypt. It's a big difference between that, because when you get into pre-dynastic Egypt, what you're dealing with is before the 46 dynasties and before there were any invaders that came in. Our sacred master teacher teaches us in the Black Book, or the Sacred Records of Atum Ray Part 2, that the first dynasty was set up by a foreigner, Narmer or Menes, who came in from Sumeria with foreign influences such as the wearing of wigs, such as blood and animal sacrifice, such as the caste system and stuff like this. Originally, that was not a part of pre-dynastic Egyptian culture, or what we call Napatan or ancient Kushite civilization, or you follow what I'm saying? Pre-dynastic. You're dealing with pre-dynastic teachings. When you get into pre-dynastic teachings, it's basically dealing with animism. Animism is the acceptance that everything that exists has a spiritual essence to it, even getting on down to plants and animals. Animism deals with nature reverence. We give thanks to the sun, which is extremely important, and this has been one of the big things as far as people who are into ancient Egyptian or Kemetic cultures or Tamarian culture, is that they say, oh, y'all worship the sun. Y'all worship statues. Y'all worship animals, which is not true. Now, let me explain to you about the importance of the sun very briefly. You mean to tell me I'm supposed to wake up in the morning and give thanks and praise to a man who I never met, who I don't even know existed, or give thanks and praise to a God that I can't even confirm exists? Thank you, God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Allah, Thank you, Yahweh, for waking me up this day. But I won't wake up in the morning and give thanks and praise to the sun. If it wasn't for the sun, it would be no you. If the sun stopped shining right now, or if the sun just blew up, everything is gone. Without the sun, vegetables don't grow. Plants don't grow. Without the sun, the entire planet would melt. Without the sun, there would be no heat. There would be no sustenance. So you mean to tell me I'm supposed to eat a plate of food and give thanks to Jesus, or God, who I never met and cannot confirm exists, yet I won't give thanks to the chef that prepared my meal? Thank you, chef. You cooked it for me. If it wasn't you, I would be eating. You follow what I'm saying? Thank you, sun, for providing sustenance. Thank you, water. Thank you, air. Thank you, earth. You're dealing with forces of nature. So the science of Nuwaubu is based solely on our original way. Before we were Christians, before we were Muslims, before we were Jews, before we were Buddhists, before we were Hebrews, before we were Moor, before we were any of this, we were something. And we had a way, and we had a culture. We had a language. We had a land. We had a certain way we dressed. We had dance. We had wedding rituals. We had all the things we needed. We had high sciences in astronomy, astrology. We built great monuments, pyramids, and other things like that. This is what the science of Nuwaubu is about. So in order for the master teacher to effectively give us Nuwaubu, he had to take us through all these various schools first. And this is why the Nuwaubian nation is the fastest growing black organization. We don't really use the word black, but we just gonna say it for everybody to understand. But this is the reason why it's the fastest growing organization on the face of the planet, because you're dealing with a source of information that can build with you on any level. Meaning, if a Buddhist were to walk in here today, right now, I could relate to him. I know his doctrine. If a Muslim or Orthodox Sunni Muslim or Nation of Islam was to walk in here right now and ask questions based on his teachings and his doctrines, I could dialogue with him, because we have been trained to dialogue with him, because we walked those paths with our master. And it goes for every other religion. And I'm gonna briefly read something. In the beginning of all scrolls that the master teacher wrote, he always gave an author's note. And the author's note was basically an introduction, so that the reader would understand exactly who he is, what paths and what school he traveled, what his purpose is, so on and so forth. And I'm gonna just kind of sift through it to give an explanation of what we're talking about here. It says, "I have devoted my visit to this planet." This is coming from, was Adam Black or White? Excellent scroll. It says, "I have devoted my visit to this planet to the resurrection of the mentally dead, which I affectionately refer to as mummies. Never did I know that the evil one had done such a great job with these people, both mentally and physically, as to have them hate self and kind." I'm going to scroll on down. It says, he says, "I sift to find those beings, the few chosen from the many called, that wish to become one with the Supreme in all, so that, those that wish to know the way, the truth, and the light to our Heavenly Father, Creator, and all of His chosen and anointed ones. Throughout the many mystical schools, the incarnation, I'm known as the incarnation of Tahuti, student of the great tomb known as Atumre, the first point of resurrection from ignorance to right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding," which is what we just talked about. He says, "I have blended in with each of the religions most interesting to my people. I lived as one of them and practiced as one of them in order to reveal the misconceptions of these doctrines that have plagued and diseased the minds of my people. Many take offense to that practice, but I'm sorry, for the truth must be told." Meaning, a lot of people didn't like that he went through these different schools and basically dissected them, right? Pointed out the fallacies and the errors and reformed. Because the master teacher has been telling us since the early schools of the Ansarul Allah doctrine that he was the mujaddid, or the reformer. To reform means to remake or redo or fix. So the science of Nuwaubu is nothing new. It's simply the restoration of our ancient cultures and teachings. He says, Amongst the Arabs of al-Islam in the degree of Mohammedism, I was known as As-Sayyid Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, or simply Imam Isa. Being fluent in the many dialects as well as the classical Arabic language, Galilean, and Syriac language, I translated word for word, without biasness, of the Islamic religion, the Holy Quran, from Syriac Arabic into English. I sat beneath the great Shuyukh as a student, one of which was Mahmud Muhammad and the great master Karama Sheikh al-Husan of the Kawatiya orders of the Sufi out of Sudan, as a Matiyah or Ansar. So that's telling you that through those schools, this is what he accomplished, this is what he did, this is who he studied up under. We have pictures, documentations, all of this. This is old stuff. You can find this out easily. As a Moorish American under Noble Jew Ali as M. York L., I republished and revised the Holy Quran Circle 7. Their connection with the Nation of Islam, known as the Black Muslims, encouraged me to do an in-depth study of the teachings of Master Fard Muhammad. I released several books explaining in depth their doctrine, which led me to another ex-member of the Nation of Islam called Clarence 13X of the 5% Nation. I collected data and published the Problem Book, which is their interpretation of the English class lessons of the Nation of Islam. Went through those schools, mastered those schools, revised those teachings, pissed a lot of people off, but woke a lot of people up. Amongst the Hebrew Israelites, while in the degree of Mosesism, I was known as Rabbani Yeshua Bar el-Hadi. As a Hebrew, I had my bar mitzvah in 1958 by the great Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthews of Harlem at age 13, the leader of the Moorish Zionist Temple of Moorish Jews. This is where the word Moor comes from the Moorish Zionist Temple. Through the school of Judaism, I translated the Torah and the Psalms from ancient Aramaic Hebrew into English. Amongst the Christians in the degree of Christism, I am known as Reverend Malachi York of the Egyptian Church of Karas. Through the school of Christism, I translated and explained the book of Revelation from Galilean Arabic and the ancient Greek to reveal the false teachings by Paul of another Jesus, of another gospel, and another spirit. And I want to say refer to the scroll we have called St. Paul, Disciple or Deceiver, which breaks down in depth that Paul was really a CIA agent and that his teachings totally contradicted the teachings of the true Messiah or Yahshua HaMashiach. And when you read this book and it's going to take you straight to the Bible, you're going to be like, damn, how come I never seen that? It says, in this day and time, I received a new holy tablet, our own scripture, that each day, as scientists, astronomers, paleontologists, and the likes uncover new evidence confirming that it was indeed divinely inspired. I also translated the book of Coming Forth by Day, called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, from hieroglyphics as Amanubi Rapata, and I released a series of books called Behind the Nine Ball and Bible Interpretations and Explanations. I feel it as my duty as the true reformer and savior to my people to make that which is unclear clear. And he just continues to go on. He says, I also traveled the rough and rugged path of Freemasonry and have arrived as the Imperial Grand Potentate internationally. I entered the Order of Acacia under the most worshipful Master Charles Tinley, 33rd degree at King Solomon's Lodge, number 4 of Brooklyn, New York, the Grand Enoch Lodge in Brooklyn, New York on Putnam and Nostrum Ave, etc., etc. My travels took me through the world, from sitting with the mystics and monks under the Tibetan Master Lama Kokomau of China to the Grand Lodge in Cairo, Egypt, Northeast Africa, to being a member of the Rosicrucian Order since 1974. I stepped onto the White Lodge Freemasonry from the Black Egyptian mystery as Tahuti. He says, I was there, which is here, when the word let there be light was uttered, and stand at the 9th gate, raising from the 9th chamber the secret which will give you the power to realign yourself. I have experienced all world religions and sacred orders, and now I bring to you the ancient Egyptian order, the true order of the Egyptians, which gave birth to all others. So that, in a nutshell, just basically explains the travels of our master teacher and the credentials that he possessed. Now, throughout those degrees that we walked through with him, because the master teachers always told us, don't believe me, check it out for yourself. Don't be a follower. He said, I don't have followers. I don't have followers. You walk with me, because my job is to make you, as Jesus said, my job is to make you as I am. So the purpose of a master is to produce masters, not followers.
I hear you referring to Jesus Is Jesus real?
That's a good question. Now, we have to be careful with that. And this is why. Because as a Nuwaubian, we are trained on not only how to study and stuff like that, but we're trained on how to answer questions based on who is asking the question. So, in all actuality, there was never a man named Jesus of 2,000 years ago. There's no evidence that this person ever existed. There's no facts that he ever existed, yes.
Isn't it because he ascended to heaven?
That's what they say. They say Enoch ascended to heaven too. They say he never died a physical death. He just went on up. Well, in that case, I can't say. That's hearsay. That's not based on facts. But based on facts and evidence, there is no confirmation of the existence of any of the people that we are taught about in the scriptures. So for a person to ask me, was Elvis Presley real? Or was Michael Jackson a real person? Right? Was Hank Aaron a real person? I would have to say, we got footage of them. We got pictures of them. I can go to their tomb. I can go to their grave site. I can go talk to their family members. I can go to books they might have written or books that was written about them. I have physical, tangible evidence that these people exist. When we talk about Jesus and other biblical fictitious characters, as the master teacher put it, there's no evidence that they ever existed. However, if you go to a book called 16 Crucified Saviors, I forget the name of the brother who wrote that book, he explains in that book how there's a savior or a Christ-type figure almost in every ancient culture and civilization on the face of the planet. There is the story of what's called the Immaculate Conception. There is the story of Cain and Abel, or sibling rivalry, right? There's all these stories that we get in the scriptures of today. We can go to ancient cultures and find those. But the difference is, when we go back to our ancient ancestors, we have no issues with confirming their existence. Why? Well, let me say this first real quick too. When you're dealing with religions such as Islam, which forbid you to make images, right? Or in the Old Testament, what does it say? One of the commandments, thou shalt have no graven images of things in the earth or the sea. And what does it say? So when you're dealing with cultures that forbid you to draw pictures, how can somebody expect you to preserve your culture? You can't. But when we're dealing with our ancient ancestors, we have no problem confirming their existence. Why? Because not only did they leave books, writings on stone clay tablets, not only did they build monuments that lined up with the celestial heavenly bodies that are still here today. Matter of fact, the 7 wonders of the world, if I'm mistaken, the Great Pyramid is the only one that they can confirm even existed. And it's still here. It's a saying that man fears time, but time fears the pyramids. Which according to archaeological dating from water erosion and things of that nature, now they saying that the pyramid and the Sphinx is way older than they first thought it was. They taking it all the way back to the last ice age because of the water erosion that they found. And they saying that there's no way that there could have been enough rainfall in the period of Khufu, who they say built the pyramid, because at that time it was a drought area. So they saying that the only time in the land of Egypt in the Giza Plateau where it rained that much or had that much water was when the last ice age ended. And they can tell the difference between sand erosion, wind erosion, and water erosion. So these archaeologists have come up with the fact that they got to be way older than they said. Khufu couldn't have built them. Anyway, going back to the question, we have no problem dealing with that because not only did they leave writings and monuments and things of that nature, they preserved their bodies through mummification. right? These Khonsu, boom, this was his wife. Boom, boom, boom. This is what he did during his whole life. To give you a whole chronology of his life or her life. And then here you go, the body, nice and preserved for you. So when we get into the aspect of what Jesus was real or not, coming from the religious perspective, no. But coming from a factual perspective and how we are trained to think and learn and study through the science of Nuwaubu, as taught to us by our sacred grandmaster teacher, Panabab Yanun Malachi York. When we get into the Egyptian teachings and when we get into the Egyptian stories, we find stories similar to what they're teaching us in the Bible and the Quran and the Torah. So we find a figure by the name of Haru or Har or Horus, right? Who was the son of Asaru or Osiris and Aset Isis. But the problem is, by the time that Haru was born, or by the time that Isis was impregnated, Osiris was murdered by his brother Set. So the Immaculate Conception story originated with the birth of Haru without the father through Isis or Aset by way of men. And that's a whole nother story, but the point is, there was an Immaculate Conception story before Jesus. In fact, it's right in the Bible. Even before Jesus, you find who? John the Baptist. When the angel appeared to John the Baptist, mother Elizabeth, and told her, you about to be pregnant with child. And Elizabeth said, man, I'm 1,000 years old. How the hell am I have a baby? And John the Baptist was born the same way because his father was old and barren. So we know that Horus existed because we found his father. And when you find the father, the master teacher said, you find the son, and you find the mother, and you find everybody else. So anytime we deal with our ancient ancestors, we have no problem. When you go to the Yoruba kingdom, they got a list, king's list, queen's list, going all the way back to the pre-Oduduwa era. When you go into Mesopotamia and the Sumerian teachings, they teach you about the Anunnaki. They got tombs and king's lists that go all the way back. We have tangible evidence of our ancestors that exist in any culture. China, they take you all the way back to the first emperor of China. All this stuff. But when we're dealing with these religions, we're given belief. We just believe. You don't believe, you're going to hell. Well, where's hell? It's down there. Down there where? Where's heaven? It's up there. Up there where? All I see is the sun, some stars. Is heaven another planet? I don't know. So to answer the question, sister, no.
So how old is the Bible?
Well, for one thing, there's no original Bible. The Bible was composed of certain scripts and texts and manuscripts that was compiled together. When you get into the Septuagint, if I'm not pronouncing it right, the Septuagint, which is the Roman, which is the oldest version of those writings, they have a date. When you get into the Torah, that's not even a complete text. So what you're dealing with is various manuscripts that was found in various places and put together as one. Then you have the Apocrypha, which is the book of the angels that was left out. Then you have the book of Enoch, and they've even discovered the book of Judas and all these other books. So there is no authentic Bible. There is no authentic Quran. Because they tell you in Islamic faith, right, that the original Quran was burned. And that it was placed upon the job of the companions to utilize their memory as best as they can and rewrite it. And as the master teacher taught us, is there not human error? Humans are subject to error. So when you're dealing with something based off memory, oh man, hey man, you remember we did that? Oh, I don't remember that. I was drinking. I remember this. Okay, boom, boom. And so things are lost in translation and lost in rewritings.
So is God real or just a concept?
Well, as taught to us by our master teacher, we have to, in order to answer that question properly, we first have to ask ourselves, what is God? What does the word mean? When we're dealing with meanings of words, we have to go back to what's called etymology. Etymology is based on defining a word based on the original language. So when you deal with the word God, we know that English is a bastardized language that comes from Middle English, Old German, so on and so forth. When you're dealing with the word God, in ancient languages, like as far as Hebrew, we have the word Elohim, which is plural, for one thing. The singular form of Elohim is Elo. Elohim means rulers, judges, right? And when you deal with these other ancient languages, you have, different translations, but none of them come out to mean God. The origin of the word God is gut in the Old Germanic, or Gutterdamerang, which means to be insane or possessed. If you want to get into the linguistic origin of the word God. So when we speak about God, we have to be very careful. Are we talking about a ruler or a judge? Are we talking about the omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent forces of all the boundless omniverses? Are we what exactly are we talking about? Now, to ask the question, do Nuwaubians believe in God? No, we don't believe in nothing. We don't believe in nothing. If it cannot be confirmed, we reject. Now, have Nuwaubians confirmed the existence of higher beings or of energy spirit beings? Yes. Or a higher force? Yes. Even scientists have confirmed this when they cracked the hydrogen atom. Now you're getting in quantum physics, quarks, biases, ZLEs, subatomic particles, and all this stuff. When you get into this realm, you entering into the spiritual realm, which for years scientists said that religious people was crazy because ain't no spirits, ain't no this, ain't no that. Everything is matter and atoms. When they cracked the atom, they found out that the atom is no longer the smallest particle of energy, that it can be divided into subatomic particles. Now you're talking quantum physics, which is nothing more than the master teacher taught us, is nothing more than the existence of the spiritual planes. Yes.
So do Nuwaubians believe in the beginning God created?
Well.
And God is beyond human reasoning, correct?
Well, this is what I'm going to do for that question. It's a scroll called The Beginning. And there's also a YouTube video. If you subscribe to the Nuwaubu channel or the Nuwaubu channel, the Nuwaubu channel is NWPU, and you look up a YouTube video called The Beginning. Or actually it's called When and Where Was the Real Beginning. And in that scroll, the scroll actually was based off lecture that the master teacher gave. A lot of people, for some reason, don't know the history of how the scrolls and the books are put together. Our master teacher is a live, I ain't even gonna say lecturer, he's a live teacher, question and answer classes. So even though we have right now to this day over 1,000 scrolls that he's authored, when you go back to his classes, live classes, especially on the land that we had in Edenton, Georgia, Tamaray, Egypt of the West, he was teaching live classes multiple times a week. You're talking 2, 3, 4 hour classes. So what they would do was take the classes that he would build on, right? And whatever specific topic hit home for that specific class, then the book administration team would go back and do research on what he taught on and include that research with his live teachings and formulate the book. So in the book, The Beginning, and in the live lecture, When and Where Was the Real Beginning, he explains to you that the origin of the word begin, begin. It gives you the Hebrew origin of that, but in all essence, there is no such thing as the beginning. No, we don't subscribe to the belief that in the beginning, because there was no beginning and there is no end. Why? Because existence comes before creation. So when you talk about a beginning, he breaks down in that book that if you're talking about our beginning, you would be talking about 76 trillion years ago. Or if you're talking about the beginning of the earth, which is 93 million miles away from the sun and 93 million miles old. Or if you're talking about your beginning, that would deal with your physical conception. Physically. So, in our essence, no, there is no beginning.
You keep referring to your master teacher. Can you tell us a little bit more about your master teacher and what makes him a master teacher, that the information that he's bringing forth is any different from anything that we've already heard?
That's a good question. That's a great question. What I read briefly in the beginning, in the author's note, is why we call him the master teacher. Because you have a difference between a teacher and a master teacher. It's a big difference. The difference is this. You can go to Tibet and you can encounter a Buddhist master, which means that this man or this woman has mastered Buddhism or certain aspects of the Buddhist teachings. You can go to any religion and you can find what they call well-learned priests or scholars of that particular religion, right? But when you deal with the master teacher, you're dealing with a being or an entity who has incarnated in flesh and not only just mastered our doctrine and our teachings, but who has mastered everything else. You got some people that spend a lifetime trying to figure out their own religion. I mean, scratching their head. I just don't get it. What's going on? I can't figure it out. I've been reading the Bible for 50 years and it still don't make no sense. Boom, boom, boom. So you have people that spend a lifetime trying to master their own religion, but yet you come to the presence of a man who has mastered all religions, fluent in over 19 ancient languages, authored over 360 books, and up to now over 1,000 publications, author publications that we have right now. Built 2 holy cities, right? And has put himself on the podium to answer questions from any and every person on any and every subject. So when we deal with the origin of our master teacher, we're talking about a man. Let me read this too. Let me make sure I point this out too, because we don't want to get nothing twisted. And he breaking it down. He says, I have stood the test of time. I have been questioned by scholars and historians of all religions and denominations. I am capable of answering the unanswered and solving the problems of the world. Yet my personal interest is in each and every one of you. No, I am not Jesus Christ. No, I am not a holy man or a preacher. I am a master teacher. So let's not get it twisted. We dealing with a physical man who was born from the loins of a physical woman and a physical other man, right? And when you deal with his physical origins, as far as his mother, Mary C. York, and his father, which was born in Sudan through the royal Sudanese family of the Mahdi bloodline, you're dealing with a physical person. His mother's bloodline takes him back to the Yamasee Creek, Washita Native American Moors who settled in his land before Columbus. His father's bloodline takes him all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad through the Mahdi of Sudan. Right? So when you deal with that on a physical level, now you have a physical genealogy. But when you're dealing with that on a spiritual level, the master teachers always taught us, even since the old days, that of course we said he was a mujaddid or a reformer or an avatar, or in the Arabic language he broke it down as Ilah Mutajasid, which is the temple of incarnated divinity, meaning every 25,000 years a specific being is born amongst us to teach us. Throughout time, nature produces beings who have, we all, and the master teacher said this, he said we all are equal in the sense that we have equal potential. We all have the potential to be whatever we want to be. However, we're not equal in the sense that I'm not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 7 feet tall, and can do a hook shot and dunk the ball all over these short guys. Obviously, we're not equal. Some people can sing better than others. Some people can jump higher than others. Some people are smarter than others. Some people are stronger than others. So when we're dealing with this, we're dealing with the fact that there are those born amongst us to help teach us and guide us that have the ability to access more potential than we may. So we break it down into 3 stages or the 3 levels, as starting with people like Marcus Garvey and the Prophet Nuwaubu Ali, who came in the early 1900s to wake us up, right? And they did excellent jobs, and they were masters of their day and time. And they took us to depths and heights that we never reached before. Marcus Garvey, you talking about a man back in the early 1900s who had millions of dollars, land, you know, boats, back to Africa movement, so on and so forth. Nuwaubu Ali, the same thing. He was introducing us to these ancient teachings. That's the first stage. The second stage is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was also a student of Nuwaubu Ali and a Garveyite, right? And he came and he did it bigger and better than Garvey and Elijah did. I mean, excuse me, than Garvey and Nuwaubu Ali did. And he was level 2. Now that both of those are gone, now the only person that we have with us in this day and time who has mastered all the knowledge that these 2 or 3 brothers brought and took us further is the master teacher, Panabab Yanun. But some people say, well, you got Farrakhan. Farrakhan will tell you why. We love Farrakhan. We got big respect for Farrakhan. Farrakhan actually spoke on the behalf of our master teacher. But Farrakhan is not teaching us nothing new. He can't go beyond or further than the teachings of Elijah Muhammad because he does not have that ability. He's simply carrying on Elijah's teachings. He's not taking us further. He's not taking us higher. He's not teaching us anything new. Because why? He just can't. I can't. If I could, I would be. So nature endows certain individuals with spiritual powers where they're able to lead and guide the people, and it's always been that way. And when the master teacher is gone, there will be another after him. So in a nutshell, you know, we have several books and scrolls where the master teacher has put his life in a book for us to know, put his life on the line, so we would know exactly who he is. But in essence, what you're dealing with is a spiritual incarnation of a divine being that has incarnated into the body or into the flesh of this man to teach us. And it can sound a little bit like reincarnation, which, you know, subtly all religions believe in reincarnation. Because if you tell me, if a Christian tells me that they don't believe in reincarnation, and then they say, well, when Jesus was in the garden praying, that who was it, Moses and Elijah appeared before him? Or it was 2 beings that appeared before him that was supposedly have been dead for thousands of years. And they came to, and spoke to him. Or if you tell me that Jesus died, right? He said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why has that forsaken me? Gave up the ghost, and then was reborn. That's reincarnation. So suddenly all religions believe in reincarnation. So we teach that our master teacher is the reincarnation of the Egyptian deity Tahuti, or in the religious school it will be Melchizedek, the Ancient of Days. In the school of Islam it will be Al-Qadir, the green one. So this is how our master teacher is able to transmit knowledge and information to us that seems almost unfathomable by the human mind, in a nutshell.
Question? So, when does the master teacher say that the Bible began being taught to our race of people? Was it doing, like, was the Bible, did we first encounter the Bible during the diaspora? Or what turned, when did we turn away from what you say is our original?
Okay. Well, what the Master has taught us is that our people have been placed up under a spell. Right? And I know that sounds a little spooky. But A spell is nothing more than an enchantment or a indoctrination. The name of this spell is the spell of sleep, the spell of amnesia, and the older schools we call it the spell of Leviathan, or in the Sumerian schools of the spell of Kingu, or in the ninth chamber now it's the spell of Amam or Papus, which is a spell of sleep or amnesia, where basically the cycles, this is a very important thing that Nuwaubians must understand. When you're dealing with the spell, you're dealing with the turning of cycles. The master teaches us about the 24,000 years. Actually, Elijah first taught about this. The 24,000 years split up into 4 groups of 6,000 years. Sun cycle and moon cycle. This is in nature. This is why you got summertime and you got wintertime. It's never always sunny. And it's never always cold and rainy. It's about balancement. So when you're dealing with the spell, you're dealing with the turning of cycles. And the cycle that we are approaching now is the sun cycle, which is why all these teachings and all these what this way of life is resurrecting. Now, when you get into the moon cycle, or when we was enslaved and we know nothing about African, we know nothing about Egypt, we know nothing about nothing, we basically dealing with a spell of time when our people was at its lowest state. Now we are resurrecting out of that state into a higher state, which is the sun cycle. So when you're dealing with when exactly did everything go wrong, according to the cycles, it was 6,000 years ago. Okay.
Hold on, brother. I've got somebody asking that you turn your phones a different way because it's coming through sideways.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
You can turn it straight up and down.
Yeah.
Two thick bones.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I done.
Okay. There we go.
I said it.
That'll work right there. Yeah, I see it now. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with. Can you see me? Okay. When you're dealing with that, you're dealing with the different cycles and the different ages that the universe goes through, and it actually goes a little more deeper, which I ain't gonna get into that right now. But when you deal, people always ask us the question, well, when did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong? How did we go wrong? And it's not necessarily, religious people will tell you, well, when we stop following the ways of the Lord, or when we stopped doing this, or when we started transgressing, or started doing this, really it goes back way further than that. Also, just a briefing about the cycles. You have the big cycle, and then you have the small cycles. You had the small cycle, which is 6,000 years, but then you have the big cycle, which is 17,250,000 years. This is, you talking about Precambrian age, you talking about, Stone Age, and you talking about way a whole long time ago. So, in essence, nothing in nature is cyclical. Nothing in nature is set, or nothing is concrete. Which is why we are now in a state of resurrection or mental revolution or re-evolution, or revolving back to our original ways and revolving back to our original path in a nutshell. It's way more deeper than that, but I don't want to go too far into that right now because we in the beginning classes.
What's the difference between a seraphim and a cherubim?
Seraphim and the cherubim, well, that is a biblical terms, Hebraic terms. Seraphim would be the agreeable angels or the good angels, and the cherubim would be the disagreeable angels or the bad angels. For instance, in the scriptures, they teach us that you have different archangels. You have Michael, which is the warring angel. You have Gabriel, which is the messenger angel. You have Raphael, Uriel, so on and so forth. And what that really ties into is like I said, the dual forces of nature. The master teacher taught us years ago, back in the Holy Tablets, about the pure green light and the impure amber light. Meaning, during the beginning stages of manifestation from the etheric to the physical, or from the spiritual to the physical, we have to remember that we were created first as souls, way before the physical existence even came about. So when you're dealing with the seraphim and the cherubim, you're dealing with the positive and the negative, or you're dealing with the yin and the yang, or you're dealing with the agreeable and the disagreeable. That's why we always taught that not all Natharu are agreeable. You have agreeable and disagreeable. Not all Anunnaki are agreeable or bad or good. You have both. And in this day and time, the Master taught us that in ancient times we were born with twins. All humans was born as twins, male and female, one agreeable, one disagreeable. But when the cycles of nature turn and these catastrophes happen on planet Earth, it shifted. Our heart used to be in the center of our chest. It shifted our heart to the left side of the chest, and now the battle between agreeable and disagreeable takes place within. So that's why everybody's not born as twins anymore.
This question is coming from at Sanut Hete Hete.
Okay.
And he says, the question is asked, so what about the higher self known as God self?
Well, there is no such thing as higher self or lower self. Let's clarify that right now. There is no such thing as higher self or lower self. There is self. And self has various degrees. So when we get into the aspect of higher self, lower self, it'll make it sound like it's two entities within us when it's not. Not when you get into, not saying about the 30 ancestral spirits and the voices and stuff like that. Not talking about that. You have a self, but you have different functions or aspects of yourself. That's why we don't say the higher self and lower self. We say the higher aspect of self or the lower aspect of self. Now, what the sister, what I'm assuming she's talking about is the deity or the God nature versus the animal nature. Because we have to realize and understand humans are animals. We are animals. It's the thin line between mammal and reptile. I ain't gonna get into that either. But we have an animal nature, which they call the right brain or the reptilian brain, and then we have certain aspects of our nature that deals with divinity, and that's what separates us from the other animals, is that other animals don't have what they call free will. Birds fly around, they eat worms, they build nests, they have babies, and they get shot by little crazy white boys with BB guns. You know what I mean? Cows sit there and chew grass all damn day and drink and get milked. Right? Animals do what nature intended them to do. But the difference between animal and man is that we have a divine aspect within us. We're creators. We can choose to not do what nature intended for us to do. We ain't got to do that. We can take a life or we can save a life. So when you're dealing with the functions of the self, or the higher and lower aspects of the self, as taught by our master teacher, you're dealing with balancement. Because remember now, on the scales of Ma'at, right, which is the deity or the goddess of balancement, right, order, reciprocity, propriety, justice, it never tells you in the ancient Egyptian writings, the ancient Tamarain papyrus, it never tells you that you have to be more or less. You have to be balanced. So we're dealing with the higher aspect, and it's a scroll in the breath book. The master teacher teaches us in the breath book. He says you should never be too consumed in the higher planes. Meaning, of course, you want to cultivate your spirituality. You want to meditate, chant, pray. You want to definitely be in tune on the spiritual level. But he says, don't forget that you have a physical purpose as well. You got to eat. Your kids got to eat. Your natural nature, who you are. The master teacher broke it down like this. He said, you can, this is what you can confirm if you can't confirm anything else, that you exist. How you know you exist? Look in the mirror. Okay, yeah, it's me. Okay, yeah, I exist. I know I exist. I confirm my existence, right? By you existing, then you know that your mother and father existed because they produced you. And by your mother and father existing, you know they had a mother and a father, and they had a mother and a father, and they had a mother and father that goes all the way back to these ancient fossils that we're talking about, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 million years old. What you have done is you have confirmed your existence. Now, the question that you got to ask yourself is, well, what is my culture? What is my way? Because every other person on the face of the planet, besides the so-called Negro or black man in North America, has a culture. They have a language. They have land. They have a nationality. They have certain foods they eat, certain way they dress, music they listen to, dances, wedding rituals, funerary rituals, birth ceremonies. We don't have that. So Nuwaubu is the restoration of all those things, because we, Nuwaubians, here in what they call America, is the only organization with a culture. Moors and black Muslims speak Arabic, right? Mm-hmm. Arabs come from Arabia. They have a way, they have a culture. We come from what's called Africa. So by me speaking Arabic, I'm going outside of my bloodline and my DNA. We dealing with ways of life and religions. That's any religion that takes you away from being an African is not your religion, because it's not tying into your ancestors. It's tying into what they call conqueror religions or oppressive religions, or they came and forced this upon you. So no, Nuwaubu is not a religion, although we teach religion. Nuwaubu is a culture and a way. We have everything I just mentioned that we don't have here in America. Nuwaubians have. We have it. We have everything. Everything you need, we got it.
So, who are the Elohim or the Elohim in the Bible?
The Elohim in the Bible, and this is going to be the last question. When you deal with the Elohim, who are the Elohim or the gods of the Bible? Remember, when we're dealing with the scriptures, we always take things back to the original language. And so when you look in the word, for the word God in the Bible, you find Elohim, right? According to the Bible, these Elohim came down and created man in their image and after their likeness. And it says that verbatim.
Came down from where?
That's a good question. That's a good question. The Bible doesn't answer that question. When you get into the whole Genesis story, right? You're dealing with a group of beings, and most people. Go ahead, brother.
I want to know, if people want to come down here and see you in person, see you teaching, how often you going to be teaching your lesson, and where can they come?
Okay.
Can you tell others where they can come and see you in person?
I'm gonna definitely do that. I'm gonna wrap this up, and then I'm gonna answer that question.
Now you got one more question.
One more question online?
You got one more
Okay.
question.
All right. Hold on. So, what was your first question? Who are the Elohim?
Yes.
The question can lead to a whole lecture, right? But in essence, I'm just going to sum it up. In essence, the Elohim of the Bible are really the Anunnaki of ancient Sumeria. Let me repeat that. The gods of the Bible are really the Anunnaki or the gods of the ancient Sumerians in their teachings and in their doctrines. Simply because now check this out. This is what the science of Nuwaubu does. It teaches you to think. When it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was void, and darkness hovered over the face of the what? Moya. In Hebrew is Moya. In Hebrew, heavens is Shamayim. Right? And the earth is Eretz. So it's telling you that when God, or Elohim, which translates as these beings, or rulers of judgment, these beings came down to create Adama in their image and after their likeness, that the earth was what? Buhu and tuhu, desolate, void, empty. But it says that the spirit of the Elohim hovered over the face of the moist waters. Where did the water come from? I'm just saying, hold on. Who created the water? So it wasn't the Elohim that created the water, so this cannot be the original beginning, nor can this be the original creation. There had to be some other form of creation that created the water. Furthermore, who was there to hear God say, let there be light? If it was God by itself, or Elohim by itself, then the Bible should say, and I said, and I came down and created man in my image, and then I said, because it was no, who heard God say that to be able to write down, okay, God said, and then God, who was recording all this?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Right, so, yeah, in a nutshell, the Elohim are the Anunnaki of the Sumerian scriptures. And then let me say this too. For the beginners and for the newcomers, any in-depth information that you might need on questions asked, we have a plethora of doctrine, WuNuwaubu.com, UNWBookroom.com, WuNuwaubu YouTube page, other student teachers from all over the North America, and books that we have that can go in-depth on certain topics or questions that I might choose not to go in-depth on at the moment.
Can you expound a little on the rib story? Is woman made from the rib?
The rib story, okay. Now this is going to be the last question, because this right here is going to lead to a whole nother hour. Okay. It is told, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to answer that question to a certain extent, but then I'm going to present more questions because I want the viewing audience and people in the crowd to think, reason. Okay, it's taught that Adam was created from the dust of the ground, right? And the Quran talks about the clot, right? The congealed clot, stuff like that. And it's taught that Adam rib was removed and used to create Eve. Now, that makes no sense. First of all. Second of all, the question you have to ask yourself is, was Adam created as a baby Adam and grew? Or was Adam created as an already well-made, fashioned man? That's the first question. The second question you got to ask yourself is, did Adam have a belly button? Did Adam have a belly button? Everybody has belly buttons, last time I checked. And that belly button means you came out of a womb. That's where the cord, the umbilical cord was at. Right? So if Adam had a belly button, ain't no way God created it from some dirt. He had to come out of a woman. But to be more specific as far as the rib, religion teaches that man comes before woman. Science teaches the exact opposite. That it's impossible for a man to come from a woman simply through the chromosomes. Women have XX chromosomes, and this is where they get the whole story. We're going to get a dry eraser board. I will write it down. The X, right? The X chromosome. And women have two X chromosomes. Men have an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. What's the difference between the X chromosome and the Y chromosome? If you take an X and break one of the stems, you get a Y. Scientists and geneticists have figured out that the X chromosome contains, that the Y chromosome contains 2.8% less genetic material than the X chromosome. What does that mean? If I have less genetic makeup in my DNA than my chromosomes, that means I'm genetically inferior to you. Which also means that women existed for centuries before men through what's called mitochondrial DNA. Refer to genetic kiss, refer to actual facts, genetic kiss, who is God, male or female, Black Book 1. we break this whole thing down. Mitochondrial DNA is very important because mitochondrial DNA is the powerhouse of the cell. It's what produces all the energy that keeps the cell alive. Now, this is general information. You can look this up. Mitochondrial DNA is only passed from woman to child. You have two different types. You have mitochondrial DNA, then you have nuclear DNA. Nuclear DNA is based on how tall you are, how fat you are, who you look like more. Nuclear DNA comes from both parents. So you're dealing with physical characteristics, attitudes, and stuff like that. You get some from your mom, you get some from your dad. Mitochondrial DNA is solely from mother to child, but not just from mother to child, from mother to female child. We have mitochondrial DNA because we get it from our mother. But we can't pass mitochondrial DNA. Now, if mitochondrial DNA is the powerhouse of the cell, produces all the energy to keep the cell alive, and only woman can pass it to a female child, and if Adam was the first, man was first, how did he get mitochondrial DNA? It's a simple question. So to answer the question, the entire concept of the rib being taken out is symbolic of the X chromosome being maimed. And I ain't gonna get into how that happened and all